Hey folks, this is David Bourne. This is the Bourne for the Journey, an introduction to this project where I'm going to be showing up in this space where I will be talking to a couple of different cameras, showing you some images from computers, some note cards, some really just a way to show you something that I've been thinking about for 6 years, thinking about, really obsessed with for 6 years. This idea. It has to do with personal growth. It has to do with the way we see ourselves, and that shift in mindset making all the difference so that you can really learn to live life to the fullest. Now, I know that's a big promise. It's a big promise to say this idea is going to help you live life to the fullest. And there are a lot of people out there that are doing that. And I've been great students of a lot of different folks that I call guides. It's one of the 4 characters, the guide character in the parts of the self. And those guides, you know, I just am feeling the call to be a guide. To like some of my heroes, Joseph Campbell, Martha Beck, Alexander John Shaya, Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins. There's a long list, and I'll do a video soon about all of that. But those guides are people that have brought their ideas out into the world in a way that helps us all grow. And so that's what I want to do. And I'll tell you a quick story about how all this happened. So about 6 years ago, I was, the pandemic started. Was that 6 years ago? Good gracious. It was in 2000, yeah, it's 2020. This group of folks, really great group of folks that I was hanging out with online already, we decided to write books together, just little short, simple books. And we thought, okay, we'll do this and we'll share each other's writing and we'll get feedback. And it was great. And I decided to write about this idea from Tony Robbins, which I'd heard about and I think I heard about in 2014. It was kind of an old idea and it had come back somehow. And it was a cyclical idea. It was an idea that if you started out with something you wanted to do, at the time he did not call it the success cycle. He just wrote it out on a piece of paper. I guess I'll do that too. So he said, so you've got something that you want to do. And it's this, I'm going to write it here. I'll tell you why in a minute. So you've got this idea, right? And you want to launch this idea. And so in order to see if it works, you've got to take some action. And based on that action, you're going to get some kind of result, right? I mean, it's pretty easy so far. And here's where it got interesting. And here's where it started to connect with some other ideas that I'd already been pretty excited about in my early 20s. Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey. So the idea, you move into action, and then you get a result from that action. But then he said something super important happens up here in this other quadrant, is you have a belief because you have learned something, right? And it adds to this belief, like, okay, this idea is a pretty good idea because I took this action and I got a positive result. And so, yeah, it's a great idea. Well, what happens is so often we take action and we don't get the result we want. And so all too often that feeds into this belief of, okay, well, that wasn't such a good idea. And, you know, a lot of my ideas aren't very good. And so, you know, maybe that just didn't work. I'll just give up. He said, your belief has a huge, huge factor on whether or not you're going to continue to, work on that idea. I've had my light go away, which is not good. Sorry, this is what's going to happen. Okay, where the heck was I? I have no idea. I think I was talking about belief. All right, let me take this video production, for example. This one that I'm trying to show you, this video of using my new space, and crap like this happens. Of course it's going to happen. Well, that's life, right? You try to do something, and then things are going to go wrong. You're going to get a weird result. And that result is going to lead to an action. Now, my belief would be, okay, do I need, this just sucks. I'm just going to restart this video because my computer and the light that it was providing for this part of the show here, it stopped working. What's my belief? Do it again? Well, I could just start over, but I have decided that it doesn't matter that much if things screw up, because things are going to screw up, and I'll just make it part of the story. And hopefully it's not too annoying. I mean, maybe you learned something about the app called Caffeine, which is supposed to keep your computer from falling asleep. And it does work, unless you just restarted that machine, which is what I did. And it was supposed to turn back on by itself, but it didn't. So I've got to figure out why later. So back to the Tony Robbins idea. So I started writing about the idea. I started to really get into it. Plus, I was with all these other people, and they were so interesting, and their writing was so compelling that I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just watching the creative process live, and I'm a part of it, and it was so cool. And my idea started getting me into like my past and these old wounds and just all these things that I hadn't quite dealt with yet. I dealt with them to some extent, but I realized that there was a lot more there to deal with. As I was particularly watching these people writing their memoirs and reading this amazing just transformation that was happening in front of my eyes. Long story short, I just got overwhelmed, and I couldn't, I decided, I just don't know what to do with this. And I gave up a little bit, not quite. This was 6 years ago. I haven't given up. But what I did was I started just kind of laying it aside a little bit, and I started reading, because that's kind of what I do when I stop working on something. I get distracted. But it was interesting, because life is very interesting how things work, because I got distracted by a book called The Way of Integrity, which is somewhere. By the way, I heard this movie's pretty good, and I didn't finish the book. So I'm going to put that somewhere. Can I remember to finish the book? Aha! Failure again with another piece of equipment. This is going to be a real challenge. That's the second time this thing has died. So, Martha Beck's The Way of Integrity. I read this, and it blew my mind, because it had the thing I was studying, which was something very similar to Tony Robbins' success cycle, something called the change cycle, she called it. And she talked about how there are 4 phases of change, and how those phases ultimately lead to integrity. So we're looking at what might look more of a compass. And this up here is your best self, or what she called your true self. It parallels this first quadrant of Tony's. And then it loops back. So it parallels this, but it's, let me make sure this is working. Yeah, that's working, I think. It parallels Tony's, but she said right here in the first quadrant, you've got the beginning of change. So it's kind of this idea. You've got square 1, and then you've got square 2, and you've got square 3, and square 4, and you move through these different cycles of change. It just blew my mind. And I thought, wow, this woman has written the book that I want to write. Of course, she's writing about her life, where I was writing about mine. Finding the path to your true self is the tagline or the subtitle in The Way to Integrity. Well, okay, so this just blew my mind. And I don't think I have this book in front of me right now. And another book came out a few weeks later that I read, which is about the 4 parts of the brain, called Whole Brain Living. It was written by Jill Bolte Taylor, who had a stroke, and she identified that her left brain went offline, her right brain came fully on and was just amazing. She was in woo-woo land. Of course, she was a vegetable physically and mentally, but she could still keep this really weird woo part of herself in the right brain. And the right brain is represented over here on the left side in the way it's drawn, so bear with me. You got the left and the right brains. You've got the logical self here. You've got the physical body. She didn't call it that, but that's what I always identify with it, because this is the logical mind. You've got the mind, you've got the body. So this is a time-based, it understands time, meaning it can remember the past. Hardwired into our bodies, into our cells. This is mostly coming from Jill Bolte Taylor, is we have these memories and these thoughts that are associated with these memories. And a lot of that has to do with Tony's idea, like if your belief has everything to do with how you move forward in the world and how you take action. Because if you believe that things aren't going to work out, then they're not going to work out, or you're going to just have to get lucky. But what Martha and Jill Bolte Taylor were talking about is, okay, you've got your mind in here in square one, and then you move into square two, where you start to take action and you start to do things. And Martha's got a whole nother set of language that I'm going to try not to use right now. I will use it later. But you've got this left brain, time-based, where you're kind of stuck. And this is where our culture, this is a big thing Martha taught me, is our cultural self is kind of living down here at the bottom. And cult is actually a good word, because cult, and you think of the rules, and if you got to follow the rules, if you don't follow the rules of the cult, then you're in big trouble. See, that's where our resistance comes from. Our resistance, our fear-based self. I have a thing where I can't write and talk at the same time. Our resistance, also known as the resistance, because we've all got it, it's this force of nature within us that keeps us from moving forward. We allow it to keep us from moving forward because so much of it is our fear. You know, it's our animal self. It's that little lizard part of us. It's the sheep part of us that doesn't want to rock the boat. Because if we rock the boat, we believe we're going to get in trouble. If we get in trouble, we might get thrown out of the herd. If we get kicked out of the herd, then we're not going to be protected. If we're not going to be protected, then we might die because we're out in the cold all by ourselves, alone, rejected. Nobody loves us. Everybody hates me. I may as well go eat worms. That's what the resistance believes. And that's what lives down here. The opposite of what? The true self. So, now there's other stuff here. There's the heart. There's connection, H-E-A-R-T. There's connection. There's community. I can write a lot of C words here. There's creativity. There is, I won't get into the whole list, but this is where if we can move from our action, our result, so we have this problem that we've been working on, we've taken some action, and then we've gotten a result over here, just like in Tony's, you've got the idea, the action, and the result, right? Well, if we will take that result and infuse it with the right brain, more holistic, loving, and connective, see the whole self. We don't worry so much if we can move past our resistance, if we can move past our ego, right? When we can move past our ego that wants to keep us small, then we can start to move into the true self. And the true self, we've got mind over here. That's where I'm in my mind all the time. We've got our body, that's a part of ourself. We've got our heart, which is our emotions and our connection, and negative and positive, more the negative emotions. Negative, maybe not the right word, but the harder constrictive emotions, the more open and loving emotions move us up towards this true self, which is another part of us, which I call the spirit. Okay, so you've got the mind, body, the heart, and the spirit. These are the four parts. These are the four things. This is what I've been obsessed with for 6 years. And I didn't even mean to necessarily talk about this today, but why am I talking about it today? Well, because part of the spirit and the heart, this community part, this creativity part, that's where I want to be. I've been in this part way too much, the logical part, the body part, the resistance part. I'm sick of that. I'm moving into the heart part. And what Martha calls the hero's journey, I call the whole thing the hero's journey, but she's right in that we just keep spiraling when we get, if we can do this as a virtuous cycle and keep moving in this direction and keep remembering to come back to heart and into spirit, where we form what? Just like Tony, we form new beliefs. We become something new. We become more and more true to ourselves. So we've got these new truths, these new beliefs that, yeah, we can do things we didn't think we could do. We overcome our limiting beliefs that happen down here that are largely based on fear. Limiting and restricting, right? But spirit, of course, when we talk about spirit, it opens things up really wide, and we get into realms where we just don't understand. And that's okay. And that's actually great, because when we start to align ourselves with the greater experience of that part of the universe, of that part of ourselves, man, that's when things get really, really interesting. We come into our truest selves. We can come into living in more in integrity through this process of change, continually growing and becoming, but also more and more we can become that spirit self where we live in the present moment, and we can not worry about the past, and we can not worry about making mistakes and cameras turning off and computers turning off and making noise so much that, you know, this recording was delayed by an hour because I had to figure out how to make that stupid machine stop making noise. Does that all matter? No. The spirit, nothing matters to the spirit, because in the spirit, everything is always okay. And that is a big deal. The spirit is where it's at. Because when you can live in the spirit, then you can do all these things and still live in the world, and you can approach it from a higher self, from a truer self, where you still face problems and you still feel those emotions, but you feel them in a different way, because what you can do is start to accept that they're going to come, and then you get interested in their being there. You're like, huh, wow, I really felt that. I felt my stomach drop when I had that thought. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what that's about. I wonder if I just sit here and feel it for a minute and let the spirit part of myself just absorb it and let it flow through me. And that's Michael Singer comes to mind when I start talking about that, which is a whole nother topic. So I got a lot to talk about, folks. And so this is just the intro to that. And so I hope you will come along on this journey with me, this Born for the Journey project that starts now. We're talking about a lot of cool stuff. I hope you enjoy it, and you can always find more at davidborn.com. So I hope you will see you there. Cheers.